tonight we pause the noise of our feeds to remember 5 names that once filled our screens with music, sport, and story. Denise Alexander and Leslie Charleson shaped decades of daytime television, steady lights guiding audiences through love and loss. David Johansen, electric frontman and wry storyteller, pushed rock to the edge and grinned as it leapt. Ryne Sandberg, a quiet perfectionist, turned second base into poetry and taught a city to dream in summer. And Chuck Mangione made the flugelhorn sing bright, effortless, unforgettable. This is not a breaking headline, but a moment of listening to the work they built, the grace they carried, and the echoes they leave behind. What truly unfolded in those final chapters? What do we remember when the applause fades and the lights go soft? Stay with me as we retrace their last days and the legacies that still hum beneath everything they touched. In the late 1970s, when jazz seemed to drift further into the margins of popular taste, Chuck Mangione emerged with a sound that was both sophisticated and accessible. Born in 1940 in Rochester, New York, Mangione took the warm, mellow timbre of the flugelhorn and carried it into living rooms and radio stations across America. His breakout composition, Feels So Good, 1977, became an unlikely anthem, blending jazz improvisation with pop sensibility and securing his place as one of the few jazz musicians to achieve mainstream stardom. Mangione was not simply a performer. He was a composer and cultural ambassador, often remembered for the way he smiled, as he played joy made audible through brass. His concerts were events of warmth rather than spectacle where audiences felt part of something communal. Beyond his commercial hits, he wrote scores and collaborated across genres, always carrying with him the same gentleness that defined his style. For many, he represented jazz at its most inviting music that welcomed rather than intimidated, that spoke of happiness without losing depth. To remember Chuck Mangione is to recall a time when a single melody could unite listeners across generations, and to recognize an artist who made the flugelhorn sing with both intimacy and grandeur. As the decades moved forward, Chuck Mangione slowly stepped away from the global spotlight that had once shone so brightly on him. Though his name remains synonymous with Feels So Good, he spent much of his later life in quieter pursuits. After years of touring and recording, he chose to scale back his public appearances, preferring the calm of home and family to the constant demands of the road. Those who encountered him in these years often described a man at peace, warm, reflective, and still carrying the gentle joy that had always marked his music. Health concerns eventually made travel and performance less frequent, but Mangione never lost his connection to music. He continued to compose in private and occasionally granted interviews where he spoke about the enduring power of melody and the gift of having touched audiences around the world. Unlike many artists of his generation, his later years were free from scandal. They were marked instead by an almost meditative retreat into simplicity. For fans, the sight of Mangione in his later years, still smiling, still holding his horn, was profoundly moving. It reminded them that while the frenzy of fame may fade, the essence of artistry remains. These final years revealed not a fading star, but a man content in the knowledge that his music had already secured him a place in history. The final notes of Chuck Mangione's life came in December 2025, when news spread that the beloved flugelhornist had died at the age of 85. He passed away peacefully in his hometown of Rochester, surrounded by family, leaving behind a silence that felt almost unimaginable for those who had long associated him with joyful soaring melodies. The announcement, confirmed by his representatives, reverberated through both the jazz world and popular culture at large. Though the official cause was attributed to natural causes, the sense of loss ran deeper than any medical explanation could capture. Radio stations across the country replayed Feels So Good, filling the airwaves with the tune that had once defined a summer, a decade, and an entire generation's introduction to jazz. Musicians spoke of him as a bridge, a man who made jazz approachable without sacrificing artistry. Fans, meanwhile, shared stories of hearing his music at weddings, road trips, or quiet evenings, each memory tied inseparably to the warmth of his horn. For many, his passing raised a poignant question. How do we measure the absence of an artist whose sound became the soundtrack of joy itself? The answer perhaps was found in the very melodies he left behind, timeless, comforting, and still echoing long after his final breath. Chuck Mangione's legacy is one of melody warmth and accessibility. At a time when jazz risked being seen as distant or elitist, he opened the door wide, inviting listeners of every age to find joy in its rhythms. His 1977 anthem, "Feels So Good," remains not only a commercial success, but a cultural touchstone proof that instrumental music could speak louder than words. Beyond that single song, his compositions for film, television, and live performance embodied a philosophy that music should uplift and connect. Colleagues described him as a gentle innovator, a man who pushed boundaries not by volume or confrontation, but by offering comfort in sound. Younger musicians, especially those who picked up brass instruments, often cited Mangione as their entry point into jazz, proof that the genre could be approachable and fun. His ever-present smile became symbolic of the joy he transmitted through music. In the days following his death, tributes flowed from across the music industry. Jazz legends called him a bridge between tradition and popular culture. Fans recounted moments where his music scored the happiest days of their lives. Even now, when the opening notes of "Feels So Good" play, there is an immediate lift of the spirit. Chuck Mangione may be gone, but his music continues to glow like sunlight, timeless, radiant, and forever so good. In the gritty streets of New York City's early 1970s music scene, David Johansen emerged as a voice that could not be ignored. Born in 1950, he became the swaggering, magnetic frontman of the New York Dolls, a band that would burn bright and brief, but alter the course of rock history. With his raw vocals, flamboyant style, and mischievous stage presence, Johansen pushed against every boundary, marrying glam with grit, and setting the stage for punk's arrival. His persona was half sneer, half celebration, daring audiences to confront a sound and look that felt dangerous and exhilarating all at once. But Johansen's artistry was never confined to one mask. Reinventing himself as Buster Poindexter, in the 1980s he found new fame with the playful hit "Hot, Hot, Hot," proving that he could slip between satire and sincerity with ease. For decades, he embodied the restless spirit of reinvention, an artist who refused to calcify into nostalgia. To understand David Johansen is to recognize him as both provocateur and poet, a performer who blurred lines, defied labels, and left behind a sonic legacy that still reverberates through every distorted guitar riff of modern rock. In his later years, David Johansen wore the weight of time with the same sly grin that had once electrified the stage. The once feral frontman eased into a quieter rhythm, though he never truly abandoned performance. He continued to appear at intimate venues, delivering sets that blended the raw edge of the Dolls with the playful charm of his Buster Poindexter persona. His voice, roughened by years of use, carried a different kind of authority. Less a snarl, more a storyteller's gravel. Behind the curtain, however, his health began to falter. Friends spoke of lingering ailments, the toll of a lifetime lived at full volume. Yet, Johansen rarely dwelled on decline. In interviews, he laughed at mortality, brushing off questions of age with the same irreverence that once made him infamous. His reflections carried a poignant honesty, the realization that his generation of rock rebels had become elders, their rebellion now part of history. These twilight years were not filled with scandal, but with introspection. He spoke often of the joy of music itself, of watching younger artists reinterpret the chaos he and the Dolls had ignited decades earlier. Though the spotlight dimmed, his influence never did. To see Johansen late in life was to see a man who had outlived expectation, still carrying the spark of mischief, even as shadows lengthened around him. The closing act of David Johansen's life came in January 2025 when the music world learned that the voice of the New York Dolls had fallen silent at 74. He died at his home in New York City, a place that had always been both his canvas and his muse. The news traveled swiftly through the industry, a reminder that one of punk's unruly godfathers had finally exited the stage. For fans who had grown up on the Dolls' chaotic anthems, or danced to Buster Poindexter's tongue-in-cheek party songs, it was a moment of collective pause. Reports confirmed natural causes, but the simplicity of that phrase could never capture the magnitude of his absence. In clubs across the city, DJs spun Personality Crisis and Tribute. Others turned to Hot, 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 smiling through tears at his playful reinvention. Fellow musicians posted raw, heartfelt messages, remembering a man who was as unpredictable offstage as he was magnetic on it. Some wondered aloud how to measure the end of someone who had given shape to an entire era of defiance. His passing was not only the loss of a performer, but the closing of a chapter in the ongoing story of New York rock. David Johansen's legacy is carved into the DNA of modern music. With the New York Dolls, he helped invent a language of sound and style that made punk possible, a fusion of glam garage and pure chaos that inspired artists from the Sex Pistols to the Ramones. His stage swagger, irreverent wit, and refusal to conform turned him into a blueprint for generations of performers who wanted more than melody, they wanted attitude. Even in his Buster Poindexter years, when he donned a tuxedo and crooned novelty hits, he was still reshaping culture, showing that reinvention itself could be an art form. Colleagues remembered him as both sharp-tongued and deeply kind, a man who loved to tell stories as much as he loved to sing. Younger musicians spoke of his encouragement, his delight in watching the chaos he once unleashed echo forward into new forms. Critics hailed him as a bridge between the raw spirit of 1970s rebellion and the genre-bending playfulness of later decades. At his passing, tributes poured in not just from rock circles but from every corner of entertainment. He was remembered as an icon of mischief, a poet in leather, a performer who made imperfection feel electric. David Johansen did not simply perform music, he embodied the wild, unpolished truth of it. And that perhaps is why his echoes will never fade. Under the soft lights of television's golden age, Denise Alexander became a familiar presence in American living rooms. Born in 1939, she found her voice not on the stage of Hollywood blockbusters, but in the intimate world of daytime drama. Generations of viewers came to know her as Dr. Leslie Weber on General Hospital, a role she inhabited with both resilience and warmth. Through her eyes, audiences lived stories of family heartbreak and redemption, the rhythms of life magnified for millions. Her career was not about chasing fleeting fame, but about building constancy. She was a companion to those who tuned in daily, her performances threading through decades of television history. To understand Denise Alexander is to see more than a character. It is to see a woman who dedicated her artistry to making soap opera not just entertainment, but an enduring cultural ritual. She was respected by peers, loved by fans, and remembered as someone who brought a rare sincerity to roles often overlooked. As the years passed, Denise Alexander gradually stepped back from the relentless pace of daytime television. For an actress whose face had once graced the screen almost daily, the transition to quieter days carried both relief and melancholy. Friends recall her speaking of the curious silence that followed a life built on dialogue, a silence that sometimes felt heavy, sometimes liberating. Health challenges never publicly sensationalized began to shape her routines. She withdrew from the constant swirl of publicity, finding solace in family, in close circles of friends, and in the small joys of a life lived away from bright lights. Yet the industry never forgot her. At fan conventions and anniversaries, the mention of her name still drew warm applause. Colleagues who worked alongside her spoke of her generosity set her patience with younger actors, and the dignity she carried even when the soap opera landscape began to shift. There was a wistfulness in her reflections, a recognition that the era she had helped define was fading, and with it, a piece of her own identity. These years were not marked by scandal or spectacle, but by a slow human grappling with legacy aging and the question of how one remains visible after decades in the spotlight. The final chapter of Denise Alexander's story unfolded with the same quiet dignity that had marked her career. Surrounded by those closest to her, she passed away peacefully in 2025 at the age of 85. The news, though not unexpected, reverberated across the world of daytime television. Fans who had grown up with her characters felt the loss as if it were a personal farewell. Messages of grief filled social media, not with shock, but with gratitude. Gratitude for the decades she had given, for the constancy of her presence in their daily lives. Reports confirmed her passing at her California home, citing natural causes. Yet, for many, the question lingered, how do you measure the end of a life so deeply woven into the cultural fabric of television? In the halls of General Hospital, colleagues remembered her professionalism and warmth. Her absence was felt not just as the loss of an actress, but as the closing of an era. It was a farewell that invited reflection, urging audiences to look back at the countless afternoons and evenings when her steady presence brought both comfort and drama into their homes. Denise Alexander's legacy is measured not in fleeting headlines, but in the enduring resonance of her work. For more than 4 decades, she helped shape General Hospital into a cultural institution, lending depth and dignity to a genre often dismissed as light entertainment. Her portrayal of Dr. Leslie Weber offered audiences a mirror to their own struggles, loss, resilience, forgiveness, and gave generations of viewers a sense of companionship. Colleagues often described her as the heart of the set, generous with her craft kind in her counsel, and unwavering in her commitment to storytelling. Younger actors spoke of how she quietly mentored them, modeling both discipline and compassion. Fans, meanwhile, remembered the countless afternoons when her presence softened the edges of their own lives. Even after she stepped away from the screen, reruns and retrospectives kept her spirit alive, a reminder of how one performance can outlast time. Tributes poured in at her passing. Former co-stars spoke of her grace, industry voices called her a pioneer, and admirers around the world mourned not just an actress, but a friend they felt they had known. Denise Alexander's artistry did not vanish with her. It lingers in memory and influence and in the echoes of every storyline she helped bring to life. Through nearly 5 decades of daytime drama, Leslie Charleson became inseparable from the role of Monica Quartermaine on General Hospital. Born in 1945, she stepped into the world of acting in the 1960s, but it was her arrival in Port Charles in 1977 that sealed her place in television history. Monica was ambitious, complicated, vulnerable, and fiery, and Charleson gave her a humanity that kept audiences captivated year after year. For fans, she was not merely playing a character. She was Monica embodying the struggles and triumphs of a woman who became a cornerstone of the soap opera's storytelling. Off-screen, Charleson was admired for her professionalism and loyalty to her craft. Few actors remain with one series for over 40 years, but she embraced the challenge, proving that soap operas could produce performances as nuanced and enduring as any other dramatic form. To understand her impact is to recognize that she helped define what long-form television could be: a tapestry woven from the everyday lives of its characters, stitched together by actors of rare staying power. In her later years, Leslie Charleson began to step back from the relentless rhythm of daily production, a natural shift for an actress who had given nearly half a century to one of television's most enduring dramas. Injuries and health concerns gradually limited her appearances, and the role of Monica, though still beloved, appeared less frequently on screen. Yet, whenever she did return, even for brief story arcs, the response from fans was immediate, a surge of affection, a reminder of how deeply woven she was into the fabric of General Hospital. Colleagues often spoke of her quiet resilience during this period. While some actors left the show entirely, Charleson remained tethered to her character, choosing continuity over reinvention. Away from the spotlight, she preferred the company of close friends and her cherished pets, finding joy in a gentler pace of life. Industry observers noted how gracefully she managed the transition from daily presence to occasional guest, neither clinging to the past nor abandoning it. These final years of her career were not about chasing relevance, but about holding steady, proving that longevity in entertainment can be its own form of artistry. The end of Leslie Charleson's journey came in 2025, closing the chapter on a career that had spanned nearly 50 years on the same stage. She passed away peacefully at her home, surrounded by the quiet comfort she had long cherished. News of her death, confirmed by family representatives, spread quickly through the soap opera community. Though the inevitability of age was understood, her departure struck at the heart of a genre where continuity and familiarity are everything. For fans of General Hospital, it was as though a part of the show itself had slipped away. Social media lit up with tributes, clips of her most iconic confrontations, heartfelt monologues, and tender reconciliations circulated widely, reminding all of the artistry she brought to daytime television. Co-stars past and present issued statements filled with warmth and gratitude, recalling her as both a consummate professional and a loyal friend. Yet, for many, a lingering question remained: how does one imagine the world of Port Charles without Monica Quartermaine? The loss was more than personal. It was the fading of a living thread in television history. Leslie Charleson's legacy is inseparable from the golden fabric of daytime television. As Monica Quartermaine, she embodied the complexities of love, ambition, betrayal, and forgiveness with a depth that elevated soap opera beyond mere entertainment. Viewers saw in her performances not just scripted drama, but echoes of their own lives, which is why her character became an enduring touchstone for nearly 5 decades. Few actors in any medium have sustained such a bond with their audience, a relationship built on trust, consistency, and emotional truth. Her colleagues remembered her as the quiet backbone of the General Hospital family, steadfast, generous, and unfailingly professional. Younger cast members spoke of how she guided them through the unique demands of soap opera work, where scripts could shift daily and emotion had to remain authentic through relentless filming schedules. Industry tributes hailed her as a symbol of dedication, a reminder that greatness in acting is not always measured in awards, but in the persistence of connection. When the curtain fell on her life, the tributes were universal, heartfelt messages from co-stars, moving montages from networks and fans around the world, expressing gratitude for the decades she gave. Leslie Charleson left behind not just a role, but a legacy of endurance artistry and the rare magic of becoming a household name by simply being unwaveringly true to her craft. In the heart of Chicago's baseball summers, Ryne Sandberg stood as both anchor and inspiration. Born in 1959, he rose from a promising young infielder to become one of the most respected second basemen in Major League Baseball history. His smooth fielding, powerful swing, and quiet determination made him a cornerstone of the Chicago Cubs throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Nicknamed Rhino, he embodied consistency, discipline, and the quiet fire that fans came to admire. Sandberg's career was defined not by flash, but by substance. 10 All-Star selections, 9 Gold Glove awards, and the 1984 National League MVP. His number 23 was retired by the Cubs, cementing his place as a franchise legend. Yet beyond statistics, what set Sandberg apart was his humility. He let his performance speak for him, carrying himself with the same calm respect, whether in victory or defeat. For a city that lived and breathed baseball, he became not just a player, but a symbol proof that excellence could be achieved without arrogance. To remember Ryne Sandberg is to recall not only a Hall of Famer, but a man who gave the game integrity. His name still echoes in Wrigley Field, a reminder of the summers when his steady brilliance gave Chicago hope. In his later years, Ryne Sandberg faced a challenge that no opponent on the diamond had ever posed: cancer. In 2023, he publicly revealed his diagnosis of metastatic prostate cancer, confronting the disease with the same quiet resolve that had marked his playing days. For fans, the news was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Here was their beloved Rhino, no longer turning double plays, but fighting an opponent far more relentless. Sandberg underwent treatment with characteristic determination, often sharing updates that balanced honesty with hope. He spoke candidly about the realities of his condition, yet never let despair define his outlook. Former teammates and fellow Hall of Famers rallied around him, their words painting a portrait of respect, not only for his career, but for his courage. Fans too responded with an outpouring of letters, tributes, and standing ovations during his occasional public appearances. In interviews, Sandberg reflected on the fleeting nature of both health and fame. He noted that baseball had taught him discipline and patience, virtues that became lifelines in the midst of his illness. While his body weakened, his spirit remained resilient. These final years revealed a man who approached life's greatest test with grace, offering a model of strength that resonated beyond the ballpark. Ryne Sandberg's final innings came in September 2025 when the Cubs organization announced his passing at the age of 66. He died at his Arizona home, surrounded by family after a courageous 2-year battle with prostate cancer. The news broke in the morning, and by afternoon, Wrigley Field was transformed into a shrine. Flowers, jerseys, and handwritten notes filled the gates of the ballpark he once made electric. The official statement confirmed his cause of death, but for fans, the weight of the moment was something statistics could never measure. The Cubs lowered flags to half-staff, and tributes poured in from across Major League Baseball. Former teammates remembered the precision of his glove, the elegance of his swing, and the steadiness of his leadership. Broadcasters replayed his legendary 1984 performance against the Cardinals. The Sandberg game, as though to remind the world of the day he became immortal in Chicago lore. To those who loved him, his passing was both intimate and public. A hero, lost a friend gone, a symbol of hope extinguished. For many, the haunting question lingered: how does a city move forward without the man who taught it to dream again? Ryne Sandberg's legacy endures not only in the record books, but in the collective heart of Chicago. His induction into the Hall of Fame in 2005 was already a testament to his greatness. Yet it was his unwavering humility that defined him. He never sought the spotlight, never demanded adoration, and yet he received both precisely because of the quiet dignity with which he carried himself. For Cubs fans, he was more than a second baseman. He was a standard of professionalism, a reminder that character matters as much as talent. His influence extended far beyond Wrigley Field. Young players idolized his discipline and work ethic, studying his fundamentals as a blueprint for success. His speeches, especially his Hall of Fame address where he urged respect for the game, became touchstones for the baseball community. Even as illness overtook him, Sandberg continued to inspire, showing courage and grace in the face of suffering. Tributes after his death were universal, from players who modeled their swings after his, to fans who grew up wearing number 23 jerseys, to broadcasters who lauded him as one of the purest to ever play the game. In the end, his difference was not in the numbers alone, but in the way he lived with humility, excellence, and an unwavering love for baseball. Though tonight we trace the final chapters of Denise Alexander, Leslie Charleson, David Johansen, Ryne Sandberg, and Chuck Mangione, we end not in silence, but in remembrance. We leave with the music, the innings, and the stories they taught us to hold. Though they are gone, the light they left still remains woven into afternoon television, New York stages, Wrigley's summer skies, and a flugelhorn's honeyed tone. What moment of theirs lives on? In you, a scene, a song, a game, a single grace note. Share it below so their echoes continue in our collective memory. If this tribute resonated, please leave your memory in the comments, and subscribe for more carefully sourced remembrances of the people who shaped our culture. Because legacy is a living conversation, and tonight we keep talking